Last of the Summer Wine remains one of Britain's most beloved and longest-running sitcoms, bringing generations of viewers warmth, laughter, and unforgettable characters from 1973 to 2010. But while the show gave us comfort and nostalgia, the real lives of its stars often told a much more tragic story. Many of the actors who made the series iconic have since passed away, some quietly, others amid heartbreaking circumstances that fans never saw coming. In this video, we take a deeper look into the lives behind the laughter, the personal battles, hidden illnesses, untold scandals, and sorrowful goodbyes of the cast members who are no longer with us. Their on-screen charm masked private pain, and today we honor their memory by revealing the truth behind their final chapters. Peter Sallis was born on February 1st, 1921, and took on the role of Norman Clegg in Last of the Summer Wine in 1973 at the age of 52. Known for his dry, understated humor and gentle skepticism, Clegg was the intellectual heart of the trio, providing a counterbalance to the chaos around him with subtle wit and hesitant wisdom. Loved by audiences for his quiet charm, Sallis became synonymous with the character appearing in every one of the show's 295 episodes. But behind the calm demeanor was a man riddled with contradictions and secrets. Born during economic hardship, Sallis was raised by a mother obsessed with status and a father who emotionally abandoned him. He developed a stutter in childhood, something he masked brilliantly on stage but battled privately for decades. Though widely seen as affable and scandal-free, Sallis's personal life was far more fractured. His 1965 divorce from actress Elaine Usher was anything but peaceful, stemming from years of emotional infidelity and long separations. He was once sued by a former lover in the late 1970s over alleged broken promises of support, though the case was settled quietly. Career-wise, Sallis struggled for decades with being typecast and was deeply embittered by missed opportunities in film. In the early 1980s, he lost a lead role in a major BBC production due to what a producer later described as uncooperative arrogance. Despite his later fame as the voice of Wallace in Wallace and Gromit, insiders described him as privately resentful of being remembered more for voice work than for his stage legacy. He became reclusive in his final years, especially after a battle with macular degeneration left him nearly blind. He died on June 2, 2017 at Denville Hall, a retirement home for actors at the age of 96 from natural causes. His estate, largely composed of royalties and a modest real estate portfolio in North London, was valued between $2 and $3 million. Though the public mourned a gentle icon, few knew of the internal turmoil, strained relationships, and deeply held regrets that shadowed his final decades. Kathy Staff, born on July 12, 1928, stepped into the iconic role of Nora Batty in 1973 at the age of 45. Nora, the battle axe in curlers and steel-toe shoes, was the enduring symbol of Yorkshire grit, never smiling, always judging, and utterly unforgettable. Staff's portrayal became the backbone of the series, defining the look and tone of the show from its earliest days. But her real life couldn't have been more different. Born as Minnie Higginbottom in a poor conservative household in industrial Cheshire, Kathy endured an emotionally repressive upbringing, shadowed by a disciplinarian father and a mother who discouraged ambition. At school, she was mocked for her weight and her accent, fueling a lifelong insecurity that she masked with hard work and religious conviction. Though she later became a devout Methodist and even ran for Parliament under the Conservative banner in the 1970s, there were private contradictions. Behind the curtain of propriety was a woman often consumed by jealousy and rivalry. On set, she was notoriously rigid, refusing to film certain comedic scenes she found undignified, leading to heated arguments with both writers and co-stars. In one incident, she threatened to walk off the show unless a fellow actress was written out an ultimatum that led to quiet tensions within the cast for years. Her marriage to John Staff, though publicly unblemished, was reportedly sexless for decades, and Kathy threw herself into church and acting to avoid confronting the growing emotional chasm. Rumors of a one-sided emotional affair with a younger theater actor in the late 1980s surfaced, though it was never confirmed. In her later years, Kathy was devastated by the loss of close friends and castmates, and grew bitter about her one-note legacy, feeling trapped by the very character that made her famous. She was diagnosed with a brain tumor in mid-2008 and died on December 13th that year, aged 80, in Ashton-under-Lyne. Her net worth was estimated at $1 to $2 million, largely from decades of acting and wise property investments. Jane Freeman was born on June 12, 1935, and joined Last of the Summer Wine in 1973 at age 38, portraying Ivy, the fiery, no-nonsense cafe owner whose bellow could silence a room. Ivy was a force, blunt, brash, and unapologetically dominant, particularly toward her hapless husband Sid. Freeman's performance brought unexpected complexity to a role that could have been cartoonish. Audiences saw glimpses of vulnerability behind Ivy's steel-plated demeanor. But Freeman's real-life story was anything but comedic. Raised during wartime austerity in a cramped flat with a mother who worked double shifts in a munitions factory, Jane learned early to suppress emotion and fend for herself. Despite her later success, she was plagued by imposter syndrome and privately described her fame as a burden I never asked for. Behind the scenes, Freeman battled chronic anxiety and relied heavily on medication to maintain composure during long shoots. A lesser-known scandal in the mid-1980s involved a near collapse on set after consuming a mix of alcohol and sleeping pills, something she publicly denied, but which crew members later confirmed. Her marriage to director Michael Simpson, though described as stable, was strained by long separations and artistic jealousy. Simpson once confided to a colleague that Jane resented being in comedy, believing her true calling was in Shakespearean drama. She was frequently frustrated with being pigeonholed and reportedly clashed with writers over the shallow development of Ivy's character in later seasons. Freeman was also quietly removed from a planned BBC radio project in the late 90s after what was described as creative differences and erratic behavior. Diagnosed with lung cancer in 2016, she kept her illness secret, continuing to attend small theater events until she became too weak to walk. She died on March 9, 2017, at age 81 in London. Her assets, primarily derived from years of acting and a small inheritance, were estimated at between $500,000 and $1 million. Robert Fyfe, born on September 25, 1930, took on the role of Howard Sibshaw in Last of the Summer Wine in 1985, at the age of 55, slipping seamlessly into the character of a timid, deceptively dull man whose entire life revolved around sneaking around behind his wife's back in a comically doomed love affair. Raised in a working-class Scottish household ravaged by economic depression, Fyfe grew up in the shadow of a war veteran father who rarely spoke, and a mother who chain-smoked to numb her bitterness. His childhood was full of silence, ridicule for his quiet nature, and an overwhelming fear of failure, a fear that would follow him into adulthood. Though Fyfe eventually built a steady career on the British stage, his early years were marked by endless rejection and a humiliating scandal in the 1960s involving a failed BBC audition, where he reportedly collapsed from stage fright. The incident became a whispered story within acting circles and nearly ended his career before it began. Despite decades in the business, many industry insiders found him difficult to work with, alleging he would quietly rewrite his lines without consent and subtly sabotage younger actors he saw as competition. His greatest career disappointment came in 1995 when a proposed Howard-centric spin-off was shelved after producers clashed with Fyfe over script control. Personally, while he maintained a public image of devotion to his wife, Diana Rush rumors occasionally surfaced of him having secret emotional entanglements with younger theater actresses, none ever confirmed, but consistently whispered in dressing rooms across the UK. Though he lived quietly, his final years were not without hardship. He suffered the loss of 2 siblings in quick succession and privately battled depression before kidney disease ultimately took hold. Fyfe died on September 15, 2021, just 10 days shy of his 91st birthday in a London care facility. His estate included a countryside cottage in Scotland, a modest art collection, and royalties from decades of work, netting a total worth estimated between $1 and $2 million. John Fergusson, born on December 30, 1944, stepped into the flamboyant shoes of Marina in Last of the Summer Wine in 1986 At age 41, bringing to life one of British comedy's most iconic mistresses, blonde, brash, and brazenly in love with a married man. Marina was a vision in pink and peroxide, injecting playful sensuality into a series that thrived on the absurdity of aging desire. Yet behind Fergusson's larger-than-life performances was a woman battling a private whirlwind of loss, heartbreak, and professional frustration. Raised in Wakefield in a family that prized appearances over authenticity, Fergusson learned early to bury her true self behind performance. A gifted mimic as a child, she often hid behind accents and characters to mask deep-rooted insecurities and the pain of being constantly compared to a more successful sibling. Her early acting years were riddled with typecasting, and she struggled for a decade doing touring theater in exhausting conditions before finally breaking onto TV. While she became beloved as Marina, her attempts to break out of the role failed spectacularly. A 1997 stage tour she led flopped after scathing reviews labeled her one note, sending her into a depressive spiral that led to a brief hospitalization, something she kept hidden from the press. Though never embroiled in public scandal, Fergusson's on-set relationships were reportedly strained. Insiders say she resented being pigeonholed and occasionally clashed with writers over what she called Marina's cartoonish sexuality. Her long-term partner actor Paul Jenkinson died suddenly in 2011, and she never recovered emotionally. Though she returned to theater in her later years, friends observed a growing bitterness and isolation. She died on November 14, 2019 at the age of 74, found alone in her flat in London after failing to appear at a rehearsal. Her estate, comprising a modest home acting memorabilia and royalties from her long-running role, was valued between $1 and $2 million. Juliette Kaplan, born on October 2, 1939, joined Last of the Summer Wine in 1985 at age 46 as Pearl Sibshaw, the steely-eyed, iron-willed wife who turned passive suspicion into a comedic art form. Kaplan's Pearl was unforgettable, a domestic tyrant whose glare alone could freeze Howard in his tracks and whose mere presence made audiences smirk with recognition. But beyond the screen, Kaplan was as fierce as the character she played, albeit in ways few dared to explore. Born to a Jewish family in wartime England, her early life was marked by dislocation, anti-Semitic bullying, and emotional isolation. She grew up feeling like an outsider, and that outsider edge never left her. Her brashness wasn't an act, it was armor. Her career began on stage, but stalled repeatedly, often blamed on her sharp tongue and refusal to play nice with casting directors. She once walked out of a major BBC audition, mid-reading, declaring the script garbage, a decision that earned her a 5-year unofficial blacklist. Known for her chain-smoking and off-color humor, Kaplan often rubbed co-stars the wrong way and allegedly clashed with production staff who found her impossible to direct. She was never shy about her disdain for the spotlight, nor her belief that she was underpaid and underappreciated. Her biggest professional blow came when she was denied a leading role in a West End revival she had been promised, replaced last minute by a more marketable name. Her personal life was no less unconventional. After her husband's death in the 1980s, Kaplan famously swore off monogamy and claimed in an unguarded 1993 interview that she preferred a series of flings and saw no point in remarrying. Rumors of brief but intense affairs with several stagehands and younger actors were never denied. She remained fiercely independent until the end, even hiding her cancer diagnosis for months so she wouldn't be pitied. She died on October 10, 2019 at age 80 in a hospice near London. Her estate included a modest flat in Bournemouth, vintage jewelry, and residual payments from years in syndication valued between $500,000 and $1 million. Bill Owen, born March 14, 1914, took on the role of Compo Simonite in Last of the Summer Wine in 1973 at age 59, playing the lovable, scruffy pensioner until his death. Compo, known for his woolly hat, dirt-stained clothes, and constant chasing after the stern Nora baddie, was a working-class icon, equal parts mischief and melancholy. But few fans knew how much of Owen's real self bled into that character. Behind the charm was a man deeply conflicted. Raised in post-WWI austerity in Acton, Owen grew up under an alcoholic father and a mother who suffered from undiagnosed mental illness. He once described childhood as learning to lie early, mostly to protect the people who were supposed to protect me. This emotional suppression would later haunt him both on stage and off. Though beloved for summer wine, Owen's career was marred by industry tensions. His aggressive left-wing politics he identified as a Marxist and publicly supported the Workers' Revolutionary Party, alienated producers, including the BBC, which blacklisted him from radio drama for a period in the 1960s. He was nearly fired from Summer Wine during the Thatcher era after publicly comparing BBC executives to fascists in a drunken interview. Though the studio kept him for ratings, it led to icy tension on set, especially with co-stars of opposing political views. His worst professional moment came in 1979 when a planned stage revival of the Threepenny Opera was canceled after Owen physically assaulted a younger actor during rehearsals. His private life offered little respite. His marriage was described as hollow, with one longtime friend claiming Owen lived for his work and barely acknowledged his wife outside press photos. He was estranged from his daughter for over a decade due to a financial dispute. In his final years, Owen battled pancreatic cancer in silence, refusing to step away from the show, even as he wasted away on set. He died on July 12, 1999, at 85 in London, having requested no funeral and no memorial. At the time of his death, his estate was valued at around $10 million, mostly from long-term royalties, songwriting credits, and property in Kent. Thora Hird, born May 28, 1911, stepped into the role of Edie Pegden in Last of the Summer Wine in 1986 at the age of 75, embodying the meddlesome, high-strung matriarch with razor wit and unrelenting energy until her final appearance in 2003. Audiences loved Edie for her snappy one-liners in theatrical melodrama, but Hird's mastery of the role came from decades of deeply lived experience and a turbulent personal history few dared to speak of. Born in a theatrical family but overshadowed by a distant fame, obsessed mother, Thora's early years were marked by emotional neglect and a constant pressure to perform. She later admitted to a youth filled with panic attacks and stage fright despite her public persona of confidence. Though celebrated for her comedic timing, Hird's career almost collapsed in the 1950s after she was blacklisted for allegedly mocking a BBC producer during a live radio broadcast, a moment she always denied, but which quietly barred her from key roles for nearly a decade. Her worst professional blow came in 1964 when she was cut from a West End revival just days before opening night after reportedly throwing a chair at a young director during rehearsals. Behind closed doors, her life was equally dramatic. Her marriage to musician James Scott ended in icy estrangement, with friends alleging he had grown resentful of her rising fame and disappeared into alcoholism. Their daughter Jeanette Scott had a successful acting career, but was rumored to have gone years without speaking to her mother due to Thora's overbearing nature and religious rigidity. In her final decade, Hird battled blindness, arthritis, and depression, while refusing to retire, even recording from a hospital bed. She died on March 15, 2003 at 91 in London following a stroke. Her estate, including royalties, a modest London flat, and personal archives, was valued at $2-3 million. Though widely beloved, the woman remembered as Britain's cheeky grandmother carried a legacy not only of applause but of suppressed turmoil, relentless ambition, and quiet emotional wreckage she never let the public see. Jean Alexander, born October 11, 1926, took on the role of Auntie Wainwright in Last of the Summer Wine in 1988, at the age of 62, playing the ruthless junk shop owner until 2010. On screen, she was a master manipulator, feigning sweetness to offload broken antiques at outrageous prices. Fans adored her sly schemes, but the woman behind Auntie Wainwright lived an almost monastic life, wrapped in mystery and solitude. Born in Liverpool to a silent, emotionally cold family, Jean grew up withdrawn, bullied for her appearance and peculiar mannerisms. Her brother once revealed she barely spoke during meals as a child and preferred talking to cats. Her early acting career was a grind, rejected repeatedly for being too severe for leading lady roles. She found work mostly in radio and repertory theater. After her breakthrough as Hilda Ogden in Coronation Street, she became a national icon. But behind the scenes, tension simmered. She allegedly clashed bitterly with co-star Bernard Jung, even threatening to quit during a now-suppressed 1979 argument over script rewrites. Colleagues described her as intensely private, almost disturbingly so, and a control freak who refused to perform unless her tea was served at exactly 42 Nanak. Rumors of a long-term affair with a married producer in the 1970s were never confirmed, but insiders claimed it led to her temporary suspension from Granada TV. Alexander never married, and despite rumors of secret lovers, she remained guarded, once telling an interviewer, "Some people marry their work, I married silence." Her later years were marked by intense isolation, spending entire weeks without answering her phone or doorbell. She passed away from natural causes on October 14, 2016, just 3 days after her 90th birthday at a care home in Southport. Her estate included a modest flat, vintage costume jewelry and pension-backed savings with a net worth estimated at $1.5 million. Though she shunned fame, her legacy remains a woman whose on-screen sharpness masked a life of unanswered questions and emotional distance few ever breached. Frank Thornton, born January 15, 1921, stepped into Last of the Summer Wine as the pompous ex-policeman Herbert Truly Truelove in 1997, joining the show at the venerable age of 76. Known for his clipped diction, meandering tales of police exploits, and acerbic repartee with fellow pensioners, Truly injected a certain upper-middle-class absurdity into the aging trio's escapades. Fans adored him, yet few knew that Thornton had long battled the curse of typecasting and professional stagnation. Though widely recognized for Are You Being Served?, Thornton spent much of the 1980s in artistic limbo, shunned by producers who deemed his style outdated and too stage-bound. His return to fame in Summer Wine was both redemptive and ironically limiting, as he reportedly grew resentful of being stuck in what he privately called comedy senility roles. Raised in a deeply religious household in Dulwich, London, his youth was marked by rigid expectations and emotional repression. Thornton rarely spoke of his brother, who died by suicide in 1943, a trauma that haunted him and was said to have fueled his lifelong perfectionism. On set, though professionally respectful, he was cold and dismissive to younger crew and known to walk off if lines were altered without notice. Though no major scandals touched his public persona, colleagues occasionally commented on his stubbornness and aloof nature. His marriage to Beryl Jane Margaret Evans endured, though friends hinted that they led parallel lives after the 1970s, often vacationing separately. Thornton died on March 16, 2013, at age 92 of natural causes in London, having quietly faded from the spotlight. His net worth at the time of death was estimated at $2.3 million, much of it accumulated through careful investments and stage royalties. While remembered for his comedic polish, the private Frank Thornton was a man burdened by grief, artistic frustration, and a deep yearning for theatrical legitimacy that fame never quite fulfilled. Brian Wilde, born June 13, 1927, played the role of Walter Foggy Dewhurst in Last of the Summer Wine, beginning in 1976 at age 49. As Foggy, the self-important ex-military man obsessed with strategy and discipline, Wilde brought a comic rigidity to the series that delighted generations of viewers. But off-screen, the soft-spoken facade masked a life far more complex than anyone suspected. Born into a cold, emotionally unavailable household in Ashton-under-Lyne, Wilde endured a painfully reserved upbringing shaped by a father who believed affection weakened men. Childhood was a mix of silence, internalized trauma, and artistic repression, leaving Brian struggling for years to express his emotions, even in adulthood. Though adored for his comedic timing, Wilde was never embraced by the BBC inner circle. He was quietly considered a liability due to recurring health issues and deep-set anxiety, which worsened after a nervous breakdown in 1989 that derailed a potential starring role in a major ITV comedy. While Wilde never publicly misstepped, there were whispered tensions behind the scenes. Co-stars reportedly grew frustrated with his reclusive habits, erratic filming schedules, and rumored passive-aggressive resistance to script rewrites. His biggest career blow came when, after returning to Last of the Summer Wine in 1990, he was abruptly sidelined in 1997 due to illness. Some insiders claimed it was more about creative clashes than health. His marriage to Eva Stewart survived on the surface, but friends confided that Wilde often escaped to remote hotels alone for weeks, citing noise sensitivity, though others suspected depression and secret alcoholism. He never repaired his estranged relationship with his only daughter, who once described him as a ghost in our home. Wilde died on March 20th, 2008 in Hertfordshire, at age 80 from natural causes, reportedly alone in his hospital room. At the time of his death, his estate, estimated at $1.2 million, consisted largely of residuals and a modest art collection. Stephen Lewis, born December 17, 1926, joined last of the Summer Wine in 1988 at age 62 as Clem Smiler. Hemingway, the perpetually hunched and sorrowful soul, whose very presence seemed to attract misfortune. His melancholic expression, long pauses, and tragicomic delivery made Smiler a character both pitied and beloved. Yet Lewis, best known for his earlier role as Blakey in On the Buses, was no stranger to controversy nor to inner turmoil. Born into poverty in Poplar, East London, Lewis was raised by a single mother who worked as a seamstress and often left him alone for days. He was expelled from school at 14 and began working as a messenger boy before falling into fringe theater, where his sharp tongue and cynical wit made him both magnetic and divisive. During the height of his fame in the 1970s, Lewis became infamous for his abrasive backstage behavior. He was known to rewrite scripts without approval and once threatened to leave On the Buses mid-season over a billing dispute. His drinking habits, particularly during the early 1980s, were legendary, with one tabloid alleging he was too drunk to deliver 2 consecutive lines during a live recording, a story his publicist vehemently denied. Personally, Lewis never married and was notoriously private about his relationships, though industry insiders speculated about several volatile affairs with younger actresses and a long-rumored estrangement from an illegitimate child he never acknowledged. The most devastating chapter of his life came in the late 1990s, when a botched financial investment lost him nearly half his retirement savings. He quietly sold a home in Brighton to stay afloat. Health issues plagued his final years. He suffered from dementia and spent his last days in a care home in Wanstead. Lewis died on August 12, 2015 at age 88. His estate, reduced but stable, was estimated at $1 to $2 million. While the world remembers the sad-eyed Smiler, few realize that behind those slumped shoulders was a man ravaged by fame, isolation, and a bitterness that only the curtain call could silence. Burt Kwouk, born July 18, 1930, played Entwistle in Last of the Summer Wine, beginning in 2002 at age 72, stepping into the series with a calm eccentricity that veiled his character's ambiguous origins. Entwistle, a jack-of-all-trades with cryptic stories and inexplicable skills, reflected a part of Kwouk himself, a man beloved by audiences yet cloaked in silence when the cameras stopped rolling. Behind his comedic timing and stoic charm was a life riddled with displacement and alienation. Born in England but raised in Shanghai, Kwouk's early childhood was shattered by the Japanese occupation of China. His privileged upbringing turned into trauma, forced relocation, and as friends later revealed, a period in his teens where he lived alone in a boarding house with minimal contact from his parents. Returning to England in the late 1940s, he faced casual racism in the acting world and was often cast in reductive, stereotypical roles, a source of deep personal frustration he rarely addressed publicly. Though internationally adored for playing Kato in the Pink Panther films, Kwouk privately resented the slapstick role that typecast him as a caricature, for decades calling it both a gift and a prison in a rare taped interview. Industry colleagues noted his increasing reclusiveness during the 1980s and 90s when his career stalled and he reportedly struggled with depression. His greatest professional wound came in 1986 when he was replaced at the last minute in a major West End revival due to casting optics, a coded reference to fears about Asian actors in lead roles, which devastated him. Though he married Carolyn Tebbs and remained with her until his death, insiders said theirs was a deeply distant relationship with long periods of separation and unspoken tension. Kwouk's only son reportedly moved abroad in adulthood and rarely spoke publicly of his father. Burt Kwouk died on May 24, 2016 from cancer at age 85 in London. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated at $2 to $3 million, composed of film royalties, modest property holdings, and several pieces of high-value Chinese art. Thank you for watching as we reflected on the lives and legacies of the actors from Last of the Summer Wine who are no longer with us. Their humor, charm, and unforgettable performances brought joy to millions and helped shape the show into a classic. While their journeys ended far too soon, their impact lives on through every scene, every laugh, and every memory they've left behind. As we honor their lives, we're reminded of how deeply television can touch our hearts. Join us next time as we look back at more stars who left us too soon, but whose stories continue to shine.